everyone. Welcome to this exciting discussion with our very esteemed panel of what we have learned in the CS community in 2021 and some predictions the experts have for 2022. I will take this opportunity to first welcome all of you, participants as well as panelists, and wish you all a very happy, healthy, and of course, successful 2022. Thanks for participating. Moving on to the panel, we have, the panel actually does not need an introduction. I think they're celebrities in their own right in the community. Most of you would know them. I, however, will walk you through the panel and introduce them very quickly. We have Peter Armaly, who's handling CS enablement at Oracle. We have Irit, who's the founder of CSM Practice. We have Sue Nabeth Moore, who's the founder at Success Chain, joining us from Paris. We have Rick Adams, founder of Practical CSM, joining us from Ireland. And I'm Prithwi Dasgupta. I'm the CEO, founder of Smart Carrot. I'm dialing in from Dallas, Texas today. So wonderful. Welcome, panelists. Thanks for taking time out. The broad discussion is structured to be around 40-45 minutes. First half, we will discuss learnings, and then the second half, we'll get into what we expect out of 2022. And we will keep around 15 minutes for Q&A at the end. And you can pop in your questions on the Q&A section, and we will try and address as many of them as we can in the last 15 minutes. So we have a tight schedule, a lot of insights to be had from this esteemed panel. So let's get going. I'm going to start this off with you, Peter. You have been a strong voice for CS operations or CS ops. So 2021, what has been your personal learning in that area?
First of all, thank you, Prithvi, for inviting me to join this illustrious panel. Really looking forward to this conversation. Yeah, so 2021, the way I kind of view it is that after participating in this functional area of customer success for over a dozen years, it feels like finally to me I saw a lot of evidence that a lot of companies are starting to take it even more seriously, this customer success function, meaning that they're putting in place the right sort of mechanisms to really establish kind of at a programmatic level what it's going to take to drive successful outcomes for customers. And they're getting past this kind of buzzy, kind of new kind of way of thinking about this is a new role, this is a kind of a new function, and let's get all excited about it, and actually treating it more as a business function. And what that requires, of course, is of measurement. And measurement of progress, but measurement against revenue expectations. And so I think that's upping the bar for customer success to, that's executives telling customer success, yeah, we're going to invest in you, but we're expecting results that improve empirically. And so CS Ops, in my opinion, and this isn't just at Oracle, I see it, I talk to a lot of people in the industry. I think there's been a lot of investment made in the last year on establishing, going beyond just the tools like Smart Carrot and Gainsight and Tango, but actually putting in place the right sort of foundational kind of practice around processes and measurement of not just executing deliverables, but actually how the performance of the CSMs ties into the whole talent management system. I see a lot of proof of that too.
Right. No, wonderful. I think we see that too. What you're saying is one, obviously empowerment of the CS function itself, but also the investment and the expectations is going up. So more measurement across all processes. Yeah, it's wonderful takeaway from 2021, and hopefully we see that getting into 22 as well. Moving quickly on to Irit a little bit, let me bring you in. So Irit obviously has a lot of experience across the spectrum of organizations. You look from SMB to mid-market to enterprise, even organizations, high growth organizations going into IPO. So Irit, your experience across 2021, across that spectrum, very valuable for us to hear.
Yeah, so just a way of, first of all, thank you everyone for joining us today. Really excited to be here and share these insights with you. I think what's unique about what I bring to the table is that I do work with multiple companies at the same time. Most of them are high growth or enterprise clients, but at least once or twice a year, we deal with smaller high growth startups. And then, as you know, I have the YouTube channel where I interview a lot of different executives from a rainbow and range of different company sizes. So I get this really nice preview to what is everybody's busy with. And I gotta say that the hottest topic in 2021 that was on everyone's mind is how do we cater to that lower segment, that long tail of customers, because like in the first decade of the customer success movement, everybody were just trying to figure out what is the strategy. So they did the Pareto exercise where you take the 20% of the customers that serve you 80% of your total revenues for the year, and let's just deal with those first. I think now after the corona, everything went digital. Why not, really think about how can I serve everyone? So we're seeing a trend where companies keep asking me about how do I create a pooled model? How do I serve? What is the best engagement model for my mid-market and small businesses? I think the most exciting thing is that we have a lot of AI enablement new software companies, and that category is starting to emerge much more than it did in 2013 when I started in customer success through Gainsight. Back then, if you wanted to do AI, you had to have a prediction analyst, like a statistician on your team, to analyze your data and give you an algorithm that was hopefully correct for at least 6 months or a year out. Now you have the technology in place to actually be able to harvest your data, like involve AI and customer. And I think, Prithwi, if I'm not mistaken, Smart Carrot is going into the same direction, right? Can we enable AI to infuse it into our technology to help all those companies cater many more customers than just that upper echelon? So that's the trends we're seeing in 2021. And I know this is about prediction. My prediction is that we're going to see it much more evolved in the next 5 years, not just 2022. But we'll talk about that a little later.
Yeah, wonderful. I think absolutely. So the long tail of customers is very important. I think every customer has, as they say, the best segment you can do is a segment of one. So every customer you treat individually and get going, and we'll see that trend. Irit, a little bit more. I know when we spoke last, you had mentioned something on the lines of seeing the concept of customer success actually evolve into outside of SaaS as well as outside of the product organization, because everyone who has a customer actually should be thinking customer success logically. Is that a trend you have seen in 2021?
So I don't think that having customer success on all, in all departments is still a trend, like it's a predominant trend, but we're starting seeing thought leaders come in with more and more thought pieces around how do we do it as a customer or as a company centric initiative versus thinking about customer success as just building out that function.
Right. So more collaboration across functions. You're seeing more empowerment. Customer success is looked at as an equal function to sales, product management, marketing, and so on and so forth.
Exactly. So what we're not seeing is the CEO saying, hey, this is a cross-functional initiative. We're going to adopt customer success for our entire company. What we are seeing, though, is a beginning of that. So it's more of a bottoms-up approach. Right. So we're seeing better communication and collaboration with marketing. I actually did a video around how do we do advocacy better through collaboration with the marketing team? What does that synergy looks like? So we're seeing more and more companies actually collaborate between customer success and marketing a lot better to infuse this thing called, advocacy qualified leads, where customer success documents the leads they have, contacts that they work with that they think would be good candidates for advocacy. They started to put some records into it. So they start managing it in a database. We can count how many advocacy leads have they submitted. Of those, how many were qualified? And of those, how many did marketing actually create advocacy collateral like referenceability or, quotes for their collateral or, webinar participation and all of that. And we're seeing a higher trend on making this motion a lot more formalized within companies. So that's between customer success and marketing, between customer success and sales. I think the lines are becoming clearer around who owns the commercial responsibility. And even if it is sales, then there's a better correlation around CSQLs, customer success qualified leads, where customer success feeds leads and opportunities to the sales team around opportunities for upsell and cross-sell.
Yep. No, wonderful. I just love that concept of advocacy qualified leads. I think, our own team can expect something on those lines as we start the year, creating their KPIs. So what you're saying is, look, it's very common for marketing to be evaluated around MQLs. So there is now a trend that potentially you add that KPI to evaluating CS performance of AQLs, how many advocacy qualified leads were produced through that particular portfolio. Wonderful. Irit, thank you so much. And we'll circle back with you in a bit. Moving on to Sue. Sue, your 2021 personal takeaways from the community, from the industry.
Yes, well, thanks again, Prithwi. I'm really honored to be here with everyone. It's really great. Pleasure. Yes, I'm going to echo very much what Peter said. Peter was saying the importance of customer success. And I think based on the conversations I've had with the companies I'm collaborating with and the people that I talk to on a daily basis, that last year really saw customer success becoming strategic. And I like to use the phrase, when I first started out in customer success about 9 years ago, I think customer success then was very much perceived as a churn buster. Whereas now, I think last year, we can call it an earn booster, because it really is connected to the revenues. I remember a few years ago, in fact, people were telling me, it's very difficult, they're struggling.
Hey, I think we lost
in customer success to get the recognition. And there was, oh, can you not hear me?
Yeah, you're back now. Perfect.
Okay, great. Wonderful. Did I say a rude word or something I shouldn't have said? I don't know if it's cut off. Okay, so a lot of people were saying, things like, it's really difficult for us to position ourselves. We feel like we're the fifth wheel of the wagon. Whereas now I think we're really in the driving seat. That's the start of something which I think has really changed. I think, as Irit said, I think COVID has been an accelerator for that. I think, before, a lot of our mindset was on acquisition. And within the context of COVID, of course, we couldn't always focus on acquisition for obvious reasons, because a lot of verticals were suffering. So I think that's catapulted customer success within companies and having that recognition that they're actually doing a fantastic job. So I think this strategic recognition is something which has really started last year. And I think there were lots of, I would say, leading indicators on the market, and I'm listening to what is happening, which really prove that. I think one of them, there was even a report which was done last year by the TSIA, which said that, in fact, companies with customer success have a charter which is now actually linked to expansion. This question was raised like 5 years ago, and only 10% of companies said that their customer success groups were linked with expansion, whereas last year it was 47%. So there's that trend of increase in the association with expansion. Retention is the same. The curve for being absolutely associated to retention is just going up. What I really loved as well last year, I saw that there was a report, because lots of customer success professionals are having difficulty to prove their worth internally. Peter mentioned it as well. And I actually saw a report, it was done by SAP, where they said, look, thanks to customer success, the ROI of our investment is 380%. So there are lots of indicators. Another one is the investors. The investors are really very focused on customer success. And they're even saying, look, if you're not investing in customer success, we're not going to invest in you. So that is a real indicator. And I think that is so important. And the other thing I think which investors are looking, which is related to the revenue, is this golden KPI, which is the NRR. And they're looking at that, so looking at all the companies, and it's become like this golden yardstick for customer success, not only for customer success, because for me, NRR is a company-wide metric, but certainly customer success, like all of the roles internally, can definitely make a positive impact on NRR.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Mhm.
I couldn't agree more, and I'm sure the other panelists will also agree with you. CS being strategic has been spoken about for a couple of years now. So what you're saying is actually it's starting to happen now. We have seen the beginnings of that, and maybe a little bit more in 2021, and hopefully that continues. Don't invest in CS, and then we won't invest in you is a crazy line. I think it's wonderfully well said, and I think it's a true representation of things to come. So everyone, so there's this concept of sales-led growth, product-led growth, which we are all aware of. I think this is the year, finally 2022, of CS-led growth, as well. And we'll talk about that maybe a little bit more. Thank you, Sue. Very insightful. We'll bring Rick into the picture, last but not the least. Rick, I want to ask you about this big debate around resource and skill in customer success. So obviously, evolving community, lots of new stuff happening, innovation happening. There is a resource gap and there is a skill gap as well. And it's to be had in a growing community and a growing industry. What are you seeing and what have you seen in 2021, which can be good takeaways for us there?
Hi, Prithwi, and to reiterate what everyone has said, thank you so much for inviting me onto the panel. Delighted to be here and share my thoughts with such other great customer success leaders as we see in front of us. Thank you very much indeed. Let me, if I may, just take a step back first of all, though, and just in general, I would say that 2021 was a really big year for customer success, and I think that there was a couple of reasons for that. No one's actually mentioned the word COVID as yet, but of course, it had a profound impact on the way pretty much every business did its business. I think 2020 was the year of reactive to COVID, and 2021 was the year of proactive to COVID. So in 2020, we didn't really know, especially at the beginning of the year. Well, obviously it was March really where things kicked in. We didn't really know what was happening, and it took us a few months to get our act together, from a business perspective, and put systems in place that we didn't necessarily know were going to be permanent or semi-permanent or very temporary or what. And really it wasn't until the end of 2020 when we saw that, if you like, we resigned to the fact that this was here to stay for the foreseeable at least. This wasn't something that was just going to go away. We needed actually to make more, let's say, semi to fully permanent changes. And one of the things that I saw in 2020, going back 2 years, was a lot of scrambling in customer success to enable the business to continue to support its customers and not lose them. And then in 2021, we moved on from that. Then that was reactive to the proactive. Okay, so now our customers are like this now. They're doing business differently. We're doing business differently. How do we change as a team and continue to support our company? But also, what do we need to do differently in customer success for our customers now that our customers are operating in this different way? And the realization was that actually customer success is a massive part of the answer to the question in the post-COVID world, how do we best support customers? Well, customer success is the answer there, or at least a very large part of it. So I think that COVID actually had a profound impact on customer success. And one of the things that it did, and this was happening anyway, and this has been mentioned by several, if not all three of the other panelists, is that it brought customer success into the C-suite in a massive way. It landed with a very large bang on the conference table and it could not be ignored anymore. So that really boosted the what was already happening, which was the year-on-year multi-percentage growth that was happening anyway in customer success. Suddenly there was a spike in the need. But the problem was that in 2020, people were so busy in customer success running around like headless chickens, doing all this stuff, that they didn't have time to adapt. And it was only till 2021 that there was, if you like, the luxury of a little bit more time to say, okay, strategically then, how do we change? So 2020 was not a year of growth for customer success. 2020 was a year of those who were already in it, running around trying to survive and getting very, very, very tired and exhausted. 2021 was the year of, okay, now we need to grow. So this is why we've now seen this spike in growth, and bringing in what you were then saying is, how do we grow in a world where, for the reasons stated and many other reasons as well, technology is now in place. There's a maturity in thought anyway. There's a lot of customer-led demand around, actually, we don't want to buy a product, we want to get a result. And various reasons why customer success is now so important. So, of course, customer success is growing, and it's growing very quickly. And because of that, then, of course, there is a limited resource in experienced personnel, which means that you've got to bring them in from somewhere else, which actually has always been the case for customer success anyway, right? Very few people so far, I would suggest, began their career as a customer success manager. Most of them have begun their career and had maybe several other customer facing roles, but nevertheless did not start as a CSM. Actually, as a prediction moving forwards, I think that will change ultimately. Okay, I think people will be starting their careers as customer success professionals and always be a CS professional right from the get-go. So that's a prediction for 2022. Sorry, I know I'm doing things in the wrong order already. But in 2021, I think what we were seeing then is a recognition that what we've got to do is we've got to pull resource internally from other teams, but also start looking outside the business, both for experience in customer success to help us grow, but also from an ever increasingly sophisticated customer success framework, requiring more and more variety of skills and experience, including, of course, and very much important, I think, is our customers' industry experience. We've got to understand our customer as well as our own vertical that we're in. So if we sell accounting software, well, we've got to understand accounting, et cetera, as well as the more sort of customer facing type skills, such as stakeholder management, time management, project management, change management, and anything else that ends with the word management on it, I guess, too. So I think that all of those have led to a really massive year for 2021, at the end of which, I think, to come back on what I think actually, again, Irit, Peter, Sue, I think you all said, is that now it's on the table with the C-level. And what the C-level are doing is they're saying, okay, you've proved it. You've proved you are now an essential strategic component of the business. We know that, but we still don't actually know how to make you the most productive and effective, and how to measure you, and how to prove the ROI on you. Mm-hmm. So now you're here. Help us to manage you, so that we can give you bigger, fatter checks to go out and spend and invest in customer success, which we've been a bit wary of doing so far, because we haven't been certain where that money is going. And now we need to know, just like anything else in the business, everything's very carefully measured, everything's managed, everything comes back to the CFO, and the CFO knows the value of everything and knows therefore where to invest next. And that is where we need to be with customer success, the same.
Yeah, I'll take that as a cue to ask the rest of the panelists, something I've been discussing internally in my organization as well as with other peers such as yourself. There are two ways to look at it. From the role of the CSM or the entire hierarchy in customer success, you might want to look at the role needs to own a certain deliverable. Or you might want to look at breaking up that role into multiple skills, like Rick mentioned, because there are so many expectations out of that role. You negotiate well, you advocate well, you create AQLs, as we just discussed, you onboard the customer, you train the customer, you drive a renewal potentially at times, you avoid churn, showcase value. Is there a trend you are seeing against, hiring for skills and dividing up the team on basis of skills vis-a-vis aggregating it up to the role? What is the opinion the panels have? Maybe we start with Peter, yourself.
I think at a large company level, you're starting to see that, sure, that there's this necessary kind of a consensus forming that the role of a CSM is very complicated, the larger the portfolio of products and services that they are required to support customers in. And we're not at a point yet, I believe, with technology being leveraged by customer success to the extent that it's helping your general CSM to really fulfill that kind of comprehensive role in a kind of a productive way and a scalable way. So until that time happens, I think leaders are going to say, well, we still need kind of nuanced kind of roles within customer success. And I think you called out a few of them, like implementation and other, and even we're doing that too with large strategic accounts. We have executive customer success individuals, and then we have a general population of CSMs who handle the lion's share of high touch accounts. And so I think we're going to see that for the time being, I would say, until, again, like I said, and this all ties in with the CS operations piece. Once that becomes more sophisticated, then we might see some of that kind of technology brought to bear in a bigger way to help make CSMs far more productive than they are now. And I don't mean they're going to handle 100 accounts versus 10 accounts. I just mean that those 10 accounts will be serviced in a much more sophisticated way by CSMs in a much more proactive, predictable way. And so I'm looking forward to that day.
Very good, very good. Irit, would you agree to that? And what are you seeing there? You're on mute.
Yeah, 100%. So usually what we're seeing, and do you mind if I share my screen real quick?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So what I'm seeing really is, when companies decide what type of CSM they're looking to hire, we're looking at, what type of accounts do I have? Is this individual going to serve the enterprise versus the SMB, which is exactly what Peter said? And then what is the complexity of our product or product solutions? Is it very highly technical or very simple? And then beyond that, there's like core skills that we're looking at. Are they efficient? Are they consultative? Do they know how to develop relationships and products? I think like Peter said, like in 2021, 2022, companies are not only hiring for a different type of CSM, depending on the segmentation and enablement model associated with that segment. But we're also seeing, deviation of specialized roles within the company to allow them to scale. I did a video with SalesLoft, which I think she sort of was a trailblazer in that, where she actually split, for example, those who do expansions versus those who just, deal with the retention, especially if you have sort of very simple contracts. And another factor is how many products do you actually have? A company that has multiple solutions because they went through an acquisitions, and sort of that, they're not going to have a technical CSM, even if the solutions are very complex. They're going to have a more of a consultative person to manage those accounts so that they're more of an industry expert. And even they would hire someone that really understands certain industries that they work with. And then the last piece that I want to say, and it's not a trend, but I don't see enough teams do it. So I'm going to call this out. If you're listening and you're thinking about hiring in 2022, the most sophisticated teams actually sort of have a grid for their skill sets. And you don't need more than 1 or 2 people if you're a medium-sized team that knows how to handle data or can be very technical or have specialized skills on how to do upsell and cross-sell, or are an expert in creating presentations. I mean, this is for the mid-size and startups, right? You kind of want to say, who do I have? What are the skill sets that I need on my team and who do I already have that's like an expert on that, and which checkpoints do I need to still check off? And then the next CSM that you hire, you look for that missing skill that you don't have in your entire team, so that one can teach each other. We don't need to have all the CSMs have all the skill sets, but we need the team to be powerful. And so I teach my clients how to do that grid and how to hire for that grid, but I don't, it's not a brain surgery, like anybody can do it. It's just a matter of being aware and actually doing it as part of your hiring strategy.
Yeah, wonderful. We spent a little bit of time on this because there are quite a few questions. What makes a CSM expert, and what can we expect from a trend 5 years in hiring, etc. There's a lot of practitioners on the call right now. So I'm glad we spent the time. Sue, on a related note, and this is pivoting a little bit into the future, time traveling into 2022. If we were to look at, advice for new starts in CS, right? So people starting their career afresh in CS, basis whatever you have seen, what our learnings have been, basis this current conversation we are having on the skill gap, what would you advise people starting their careers in customer success in 2022?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think it's a lot of question with a lot of CSMs out there, whether they're just coming into the field or whether they've probably been in there for 2 or 3, even more years, because I think as customer success practitioners, we're learning all the time, right? So we're always improving our skill sets. I think for somebody who is new, who's coming in, I think really I would recommend them to join as many networking groups, many communities as possible, because that is a wealth of learning, right? So if there's a meetup in the town that you're at, or even join the virtual meetups now, of course, because we can't really meet up physically, that would be a really good recommendation. If you can get a mentor, either an internal mentor at your company or somebody external as well, I think that's a great way as well to really learn the job. I think also try and talk with as many people internally. So understand, obviously, not only your external customers, obviously that's part of your job as being a customer success manager, to really put yourself in the shoes of your customers, but to understand your internal customers, meaning the other functions with whom you're going to be working with and collaborating with, the sales, the product team, the account management team, the support team, etc. Because really what you're doing as a customer success manager, you are becoming like a catalyst internally at your company. So the more you know what are the struggles, what are the pain points of your internal customers, the more you can better serve them. And that will really help you, I think, to trampoline your career. So go and give an interview with your salesperson, go and give an interview with your marketing person, create little mini workshops within the company so that you can understand them, but they also, which is very important, they can understand you and they understand your role, because there's so many misconceptions, I think, about what the role of customer success is. It's a bit the department that does everything and anything. So if you can really evangelize that, communicate what you're doing, communicate your struggles, what are your challenges, what are your pain points, so you can be helped internally. I think that would be the piece of advice that we'd give to somebody who's new, but even to people who have 5, 6, 7 years of experience. We're learning all the time.
Yeah, no, wonderful. Yeah. I think. Let me bring Rick back into the discussion. So Rick, 2022, you actually mentioned a few predictions. So what's your top 1, 2?
2022, what are my top predictions? Okay, who was it mentioned net revenue return? Was that you, Irit, or was it Sue? I forget.
I think Sue mentioned it.
That. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So I think what we saw again going further back from that was less sophisticated metrics, and then 2021 we got our heads around NRR and how to calculate that, and that was a more sophisticated metric that I think is very, very valuable. I think it's great, and I think it's here to stay and is still useful. My prediction for 2022 is that we're going to go further and look at overall customer lifetime value. So NRR is about, have we increased the revenues on average with our customer this period over last period? All right. But that is still a short-term look, right? It's right now, what is the position? But what about over the term? What about over the long term? How long can we retain that customer as a customer for, as well as how much can we sell to that customer combined? The combination of retaining the customer plus getting more revenues per sale to that customer, that is what equals true ultimate value to the business. So I think that we will see this trend continue with yet more sophisticated ways of calculating that internally. The other side of the coin is I think that we are now finally, and I'm really pleased about this, waking up to the realization that in customer success, we actually have a job to do, and that is not just to help the customer to attain value from whatever we've sold them, which I believe is our primary job, but actually to help them measure that value. So how does the customer, that's nothing to do with NRR, that's our value, okay? Nothing to do with CLV, that's our value. I'm not talking about that now. I'm talking about the customer's value. That's our job, right? Help them not just to attain, but to realize the value, know how much value they've got from our product. That's going to make their CFO pull the trigger to say, yes, of course we'll renew. In fact, let's double it because it's generating so much value. So how do we do that? Well, we need to get more sophisticated. We need to understand how finance works. We need to understand how risk works. And we need to understand how investment decisions are made. And it's not just ROI. And I would say we're even a little way away from that. Okay, so yes, we need to help our customer calculate the return on investment, but it goes further than that. How hard is their money working? How quickly do they reach TTV, time to value? Because if they get their money, let's say they invest 10 million in our product and they get their money back in 5 years. Well, then that's 5 years where they didn't have that 10 million to invest in something else. Supposing we could get it down to 2.5 years. That actually means that that 10 million is working twice as hard. So it's not just the amount, but how quickly. Sure, and then the other side of things is the risk. So whilst you've got your money out there invested in our product, then it is risk, because the world changes really quickly. And we thought we needed X, and we've bought X from you, and we've geared ourselves up and trained ourselves and got everybody excited about X. And then suddenly this new piece of legislation lands, and now we need Y. Or customers don't want X anymore, they want Y. Or whatever it is, right? The world changes. So the quicker we can get them back to that TTV to value, the less risk there is on the table. And CFOs like reduced risk because that's the other side of the equation. Risk versus reward. What's the best overall pattern for me to invest in? And what we want the answer to be from a CFO perspective or an investment board's decision, when that proposal comes across the table and they debate it, we want them to say, oh yeah, that product, we want to buy more of that. We want to invest in that service that we are offering them, because we've helped our stakeholder to show the value back to their stakeholders to get the approval to move forwards with their project, because we've shown the value. So I would say that's my I've probably had enough time and I'll give back to someone else. That's my top one.
Wonderful, wonderful. Taking a cue from what you just said on the value piece, and I know, Irit, you had mentioned in one of our conversations around the way the professional services and the implementation space is also sort of evolving. Is that a trend you see continuing into 2022? And you can add on to it, what else do you see as your top trend and expectation out of 2022?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you can't get to time to first value unless you get the professional services and implementation team on board with customer success methodologies. I mean, what we've had been doing for the past 20, 30 years is to deliver to scope. That's it. And then after that, if you used it or not, well, we deliver to scope. So that doesn't work anymore. You know, they're just simply not going to renew. And so I think what we're seeing, even in more of it, like just to support that, I have watched at least 2 software demos of companies that actually put a very big emphasis on empowering these teams to do customer onboarding, to do customer implementations to value, not just to technical scope. And internally for teams, because the technology is not really there yet, I think it's a new category that's going to emerge in the next 3 to 5 years for sure. It's gonna, we're gonna see more and more, and whatever companies that are already enabling onboarding and implementations with a project management tool are gonna have to jump on that, boat before they miss it. But internally, teams definitely put a lot of emphasis in tracking time to value. First and foremost, like getting better at tracking those milestones within the implementation phase, but then maybe like scoring the value that the customer has gotten at the end, making sure that they address change management and best practices for product adoption towards the end of the implementation, and not wait until 3 months after go live. Lo and behold, there's a risk. Like, why address it then? Why not do a lot of these things early on in the process so that you don't have to deal with it later?
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful, very true. One little move away from the value piece. So we have all discussed, and I think all of you unanimously mentioned in your own ways, that 2022 will have larger expectations out of the function and the community. And it's time to actually stand up and deliver results, whether it is head of CS, it's the entire hierarchy, whether it's the CSMs. Everyone is going to be stretched, because now that you have arrived at the table, you need to perform to continue to stay at the table, right? So, Sue, question for you, and then for Peter, the same question. One, would you agree to that trend, that the expectation is going to be more in 2022 out of the CS community overall? And the question for you is, what do you estimate or predict to be the biggest challenge in meeting up to that expectation?
Yeah, I agree. I think that because we're in this movement right now where we have this recognition of the added value, then that kind of creates this spiral effect of creating even more expectations. So I think what we need to do is, in order to really prove this value, is to have better methods perhaps in how we're going to prove this value to the C-suite, but also to our internal customers that I mentioned just now. So I think for that, one of the things that I'm seeing is a shift in the way that different internal teams have as compensation plans and incentives. So I think as we are understanding, and this is what Irit mentioned right at the very beginning as well, that customer success should be approached as a strategic company-wide initiative, then this will have like a cascade effect on the way that company is currently organized. So we should be agile and we should be adapting to that, right? So that's something which takes a lot of internal transformation. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. It will take strategic drive. It will take top-down buy-in from the executives to do that. And that brings me to your second question, Prithwi, which I think is that. I think the biggest challenge around that is that perhaps companies are not equipped to do that internal transformation, whether they are bigger companies, that have had 40 years of existence, or whether they are startups. I think that change, that internal transformation, is something which is a big challenge in order to get to that stage where you can be continually proving your worth, right? So yeah, it probably won't happen this year. I think it will take several years to do that, but at least you can start putting the foundations in this year to start the ball rolling.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. Peter, very quickly from you, what's the biggest challenge in meeting these steep expectations now?
Yeah, I would say the word for me of 2022 is going to be friction, because customer success is being successful at establishing itself as a serious business function that most people are understanding has enduring value. And that's going to force a lot of uncomfortable conversations with other peer executives, because all of a sudden customer success, what they surface in their work with customers, is going to be uncomfortable information. For products, for sales, for services, for marketing, on how everyone needs to kind of up their game to really, if they really want to become customer centric, then they have to put meat to that around the way they work, the way they build their own processes, the way they collaborate. So I predict friction will be the word of the year, and that we might see some fallout of leaders, customer success leaders who are not up to the task of being internal evangelists, really crisp communicators, good storytellers, people who demonstrate a vision and can articulate it to really bring other people on board in a kind of a diplomatic and respectful way. I think that's going to be a tall order for many leaders, but I would encourage people to think seriously about that.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Irit, your same question for you, and we'll wrap up the discussion and then head on to the questions. Quite a few, I think, are interesting questions.
Yeah.
What is the biggest challenge for the CS community, according to you, 2022?
I think the scalability is still a big issue for a lot of different teams. And so that investment in the right technology stack is going to be predominant. I think previously we were thinking, and I know Smart Carrot is a CS solution, and like most teams would think, well, I need to just get a CS solution, but actually the challenge is that usually it's not enough. The CS solution to be super powerful actually need customer data from multiple systems. And so there's going to be a shift in thinking about just a CS solution versus a CS technology stack. That's one. And then the other one is just thinking about those specialized roles and not having a CS ops person or a function as early as possible in their evolution of customer success function. I mean, I'm working right now with a fairly small company in Utah, and and another one actually here in Silicon Valley that's like a $2 billion company. And for both of them, they're just starting their customer success function. Both of them, I said, the first thing you want to do until you put everything in place is get the CS ops person. Like, I think it should be like almost like the first hire, because you need to put the strategy in place. You need to define the processes. You need to, maybe even get the system in place. And they might already have some people that do customer success in some sort of a capacity. But to really get the function going and do it in a right, scalable, proactive manner, you got to have, everything defined. Otherwise, it's just like, you're just throwing people out there and calling them customer success. And there's no real strategy and no way to prove value internally or to customers. And so I think that's one of those things, doubling down on the CS ops investment and really thinking through what technology and data we really need.
Sure. Wonderful. Wonderful. No, I think it was a very insightful to hear from all of you. I hope the audience also gained a lot out of this. So quite a few questions, and we'll sieve through the questions a little bit in the context of the theme of this webinar, which really is learnings from 2021 and what we are trying to predict for 2022 as common challenges or trends or opportunities. So very specific questions around how you solve a CS problem. This may not be the forum to answer that, but we'll just look at some trends. And one trend here is one question: how do you see and anticipate how CSM and KAM will work together? And I assume KAM here is key account management. And anyone wants to pick that up? How does CSM and key account management work together? What trends do we see and anticipate? Yeah, Rick, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that they are actually merging. Ultimately, I think key account management and customer success management is at worst very closely aligned, and at best we're actually talking about the same thing, right? We're talking about an existing customer who has some experience with our product, and we have some experience with them, and what they want is to maximize the value they can squeeze out of their relationship with us, their supplier, and what we want is to maximize the value that we can get out of a relationship with them, the customer, and that requires them to know us and our products, and us to know them and their problems. Okay, so you can call somebody anything you like. It doesn't matter what their title is. The point is we need someone who goes in, understands the world of the customer, understands the art of the possible in our products, and by products, obviously I mean anything, including services, and understands how those two combine to generate business value. okay, and can talk about those and build, as Peter said, a story to connect them all together. Does it matter whether they're called an account manager or a customer success manager? I don't think so, to be quite honest. I don't think it does. Now, what I do think, though, is that it's important from the customer's perspective that they understand our remuneration model and that they have trust and confidence in the information that they are being given, and that they understand that we, the inverted commas supplier, the information that they are getting is actually in their best interests and delivered, as a professional consultant, thinking from their perspective rather than as a salesperson, looking to maximize the revenue values from them. And that is always going to be a delicate balance to tread in any situation. But I'll let Irit come in because I know she wants to come in and say something.
Go ahead, Irit.
I completely disagree. So it only is true, Rick, in certain types of companies. Okay. And I'll explain why. I just went through this exercise with one of my customers, and look, sometimes it makes sense to split the function that's responsible for onboarding, making sure that the product has been adopted, and really focus on the product adoption and product setup, and it's like a semi-technical role versus an account manager, because there's a very low churn issue and the expansion opportunities are vast, and it's almost like it just depends on the business model. And you see this, the segregation between someone who hunts for new business versus someone that's responsible for retention and expansion versus customer success, who's mainly the function, to increase consumption. So this model specifically is a consumption model where the contract is evergreen, and they only get revenues from the customer if they really just use the product. And the more that they use the data or the service or the transactions, the more revenue they get from the customer. So in this type of business model, for example, not having a segregation between someone who's responsible for the commercial versus someone who's responsible in increasing consumption, it's not going to work as efficiently. And so again, I just want to put the caveat that this type of roles and responsibilities, okay, for in the different customer journey, right? And there's a difference even in sales between new business and existing business. And then this is a very common model for transactional models. I just wanted to share that really quickly, because there's no one size fits all. Right. Sometimes there should be an account manager and a customer success manager. And sometimes you're absolutely right. It doesn't matter how we call them, that person owns everything, and yada, yada, yada. So just wanted to clarify that.
Wonderful.
May I respond to that?
Yeah.
Yes, I think so.
There's
poor guy.
We'll move on from this question. We'll carry on a separate forum on this, I think. But I think the point is valid. There is no right answer here. It is horses for courses. What you want, what is the right fit. To a large extent, it is a subset of each other, as is sales. Everybody is customer success. You could argue it both ways, I guess, but it brought up a very, very valid point. At times, you might need that as a specialized role. Moving on very quickly, there's an interesting trend question. Second recent example of a chief customer officer transitioning to CEO role, Christina Crawford became CEO of Logic Monitor. Do you see this as a trend gathering strength? I do think so. There is, HubSpot CEO right now. She transitioned from a chief customer officer role as well. It is a validation of what the industry has been saying, what all of us has been saying, that CS, if you perform in the function and in leading the function, you do become as powerful as, let's say, a sales or a product. That is, just outright my opinion. I mean, everyone sees value if you are able to keep investors happy, if you're able to keep the board happy. If it is NRR the board is chasing and you are contributing significantly to keeping them happy, you do, have a fair shot at the role as and when it comes up as well. But I'll open it up for a few others, whoever wants to comment a little bit on that one. Do you see this as a trend?
I'll just say, if it's a trend, it's a very slow or low trajectory. But I think maybe within 5 years, we'll see it'll become much more common.
Yeah.
I would say the ones we've seen so far are exceptional individuals who were able to tie the work of the organization to the revenue. And that's what convinced the board to give them that responsibility to lead the company, because ultimately companies, it's all about the revenue, right? And if you can really demonstrate you're driving increased revenue expansion opportunities through customer success with your existing community customers, and that's a major kind of data point that they'll look at and say, okay, we need to give them even more responsibility. So I think, yeah, it's a trend, but it's a very low trend right now.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah, I might just add to that as well. I think it's experimental at the moment as well, because I'm seeing a lot of CCOs or CROs that have more or less the same responsibility, but they have a different title. And in some companies where the CCO reports to the CRO. So I think it's all kind of here, there, and everywhere at the moment. And again, it's probably something which we're experimenting with, but it's very fractional right now, as Peter said. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think the trend will be, you are given the opportunity, basis the expectation out of that role. If you start doing justice to it, like you mentioned, Peter, that start owning more revenue responsibilities, it will get there. I agree with the panel. What are your predictions on how CS and community will come together to champion customers? Especially with yesterday's announcement of Gainsight acquiring Insighted. Peter, you want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, I think I raised my hand to answer that one. I'm excited by that. I'm a big advocate and champion myself of communities, and I really push it really hard internally with our internal community, but externally, obviously, many of you know I'm really commonly on the platforms. And so I think it's a very powerful way for customer success to drive knowledge to not just your own customers, but to the community at large, and to really actually build your own brand. And I think this is going to be compared to what I just said about the previous question. I think this is a trend that's going to rocket. And I think the Gainsight announcement with Insighted yesterday was, I was a little surprised by that. I sent Nick a congratulatory note. I think it's a really good move, but it's probably an indicator that we're going to see a lot more energy there.
Sure. No, well said. I think we all agree the community concept, and I think a large part of how value is driven can be accelerated once you approach it from a community standpoint, right? So I think there's a lot of what's in it for me for organizations to actually go and drive communities more. I agree with you, Peter, there. There are some very specific questions on how do I handle this situation and that, which we will probably skip for this forum. We have just about 2 minutes left. I'm just taking this last question. Given all the predictions and advancements in CS, what would you recommend a new leader prioritize when building a CS team at a startup? So a startup building a CS team, when should they start? Is there a trend there? Have we seen startups hit CS functions once they're above a certain revenue number? Or do you recommend in 2022 onwards, startups start hiring CS even before sales, like we did?
I'd probably go with this. I'm not seeing that trend right now, to be honest, with startups, unfortunately. I think it should be the case, of course, but we're probably not there yet. But if it does happen, obviously, I think a customer success person should be part of the first hires. As soon as you get your first customer, in fact, you should be hiring your first customer success manager, really, because you should be thinking long term. So that's not the case right now. So if you are a CSM and you're starting in a startup, I would say one of the first things to do is to interview as many customers as possible. Interview them and even create some focus groups to try and really understand where they are, what is their journey so far with the use of your product and your services, and just document it, share it internally with the different roles internally, and make an action plan to make sure that you're not getting churn, you're not getting those first signs of churn.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah.
With that, we are almost at the top of the hour. So we'd love to continue this discussion. It's been very enriching, but we'd have to stop, keeping time constraints in mind. We will do this again, hopefully soon with this same panel, and maybe take a mid-year check on how things have been going on these predictions. So thank you, panel. Thank you, all participants. You will receive the recording, a link to the recording. And as usual, feel free to reach out to any of us. Should you have any follow-through questions, we would love to interact, be part of the community, and see how best we could help. Thanks once again. Have a great rest of the day, evening, rest of the month. Stay healthy, stay safe, and stay smart. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Bye-bye,
you,
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.